Hi everybody, I'm Vicky Stark and this is my Wednesday Q&A Facebook Live. This week, in the midst of everything that's going on, I want you to know I'm thinking about you, and I can imagine how hard it is. I keep getting struck by how what's happening in our world with the COVID-19 is so similar. It's so analogous to what happens when your husband leaves and suddenly your whole world is upside down and everything is, that you expected and that, the way you thought life was going to be is suddenly turned on its head. And you don't know what the future is going to bring. And there's all this fear, and there's all this shock, and you're venturing out into the unknown. And it affects you financially, and it affects you, it makes you feel so lonely, particularly if you're living alone and your husband is off and living with somebody else. So it's really hard. And so it's very reminiscent of what it's like when your husband leaves, when now you're facing all of this uncertainty. But one woman wrote to me and said, I can deal with this COVID-19 stuff because I'm tough. I've been through it already, and I know I'm going to get through it. And I know I can just put one foot in front of the other and make it to the other side. So I hope that you are going to be courageous, and you're going to maybe feel the fear, but don't forget that this period of time will pass, and we will get past it. And you will get back to your life in maybe a different shape or form, but it's still your life. So I'm always thinking how we can turn a crisis into an opportunity for growth. And so even that's true here with the coronavirus, how you can use your ingenuity and your smarts and your resourcefulness to be able to get through this time, to be able to cook the food and cut your own hair and do all the kooky things that we're all doing that you never thought you'd be doing. So anyhow, tonight I have 4 questions that are not about coronavirus. They're really about runaway husbands. So let's get to it. So the first one's from Angela, and she says, is there a chance that these men, parenthesis, our husbands, have been living a double life all along and we just didn't see it until the final discard? So this is a question that I've heard in one form or another, and basically the question is, did he change recently, or was he always like this? Was he always a secretive person, even though he seemed to be with me and really engaged in our relationship? And I really believe that the answer is that he changed. For many of us, we've had long-term marriages for years, for decades, sometimes for several or many decades. And I really don't believe that the whole time that your husband had this internal second life going on. I really think that when he was with you, he was with you. And I'm not just saying that to make you feel better. I think it was genuine when he was being your loving husband. But that just before he left, or maybe a couple of years before he left, something shifted inside and he started to alter and change. But I really believe that that was only in the last segment of your relationship with him, that he wasn't always like that he wasn't always, hiding another personality inside. Okay. Second question is from Peggy, and she says, how does one get over the embarrassment? I've locked myself in the house for 3 years. And I can really understand this. I once worked with a woman who said that after her husband left, she was so embarrassed that she only did grocery shopping in the middle of the night at the all-night grocery store because she didn't want to run into anybody. And what that means to me is that what it has to do is your interpretation of what your husband leaving means, and that you're buying that message that you're defective, that you failed, that you're at fault, and that you have something to be embarrassed or ashamed of. And really, Peggy, I want you to leave that behind from right now. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Your husband left. He left for his own reasons. And you didn't have to be the most perfect wife in the world, but you can hold your head up high and recognize that he probably told you a lot of things that you did wrong as a way of justifying his behavior. But you don't have to buy that story. And it's time to stop being embarrassed and stop feeling ashamed and stop feeling like you screwed up, you did something wrong, you were deficient, you couldn't keep him, and all of those stories that you tell yourself that, trust me, are really not true. So you got to move past that. And anyone else who's experiencing that sense of embarrassment or shame, I want you to become more confident and stop blaming yourself. He might be blaming you, but you don't have to blame yourself. Okay, next question is from Diane. And she says, the question that nagged me all these years is, why do they become so hateful and angry towards us after abandoning us? So the reason that they do that is that they have to justify their behavior. It's sort of like an abusive pattern where a man feels like she drove me to hit her, that it's her fault, and that she forced me to become violent. And so very often when men leave, they create this whole story that it was your fault and that you drove him to it. And that's a way of sort of exporting any responsibility for his behavior. And so it's, it's a painful thing and it hurts, but that anger that he's expressing towards you it keeps him from having to feel remorse. It's much easier to feel blame than to feel remorse. And also to create a story that you're to blame and that if you had only been different, he wouldn't have been forced into having an affair and leaving. And so really, it's pretty shocking that so many men become so angry at us. It's like pretty mystifying, but it's in the service of them justifying their behavior. And the final question is a longer one. It's from Melissa, and she says, it's been 3 months since he dropped the bomb. Although I gave him safe opportunities to admit that he had another woman, he denied it fervently. I have now found out that my suspicions were right, and I've had no contact with him since he moved out over a month ago. We have no children together. Now I'm distraught and desperately want to confront him so that I can let him know that I know that he has another woman, and that he's been caught in his betrayal. Yet every single person I've told tells me I should just move on and keep my mouth shut. How do I fight this overwhelming need to confront him about his lies? First of all, you're very, very early on in this whole healing process. And of course you're in turmoil. And of course you want justification. And you want to let him know. You don't want to let him off the hook and feel that you've accepted the lies that he told you, that there isn't somebody else, now that you have concrete proof that there is somebody else. And you know what I feel? Let him know. You don't have to stop yourself from telling him. Tell him. You might not get the satisfaction that you want. You might not get him feeling sad or remorseful or feeling, like he's been caught and recognizing that. But I think it will help you feel some sense of relief, and it won't do you any harm. So just tell him what you need to tell him. Don't, in a straightforward kind of way, and that might help you feel a little tiny bit more closure than if you just kept your mouth shut and moved on and let him keep believing that you believed his story, that there's nobody else in the picture. So that's it for tonight, everybody. Take care of yourself, stay well, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. So long.